A mid-level software engineer in Austin, Texas pulls in around $115,000 a year. Good salary, comfortable life. Nobody's going to feel sorry for them. But here's what's wild. A Delta Force operator, someone who has survived a selection process that breaks 95% of candidates, someone who has spent years mastering close-quarters combat, explosives, languages, and free-fall parachute operations. Someone the United States government trusts with its most classified missions on the planet. That person earns less. We're talking about arguably the most skilled, highest-risk military professionals alive, and their paycheck doesn't even keep pace with a Google employee who's been there 3 years. So why do they stay? Why would anyone choose $67,000 a year and a near certainty of traumatic brain injury over $400,000 a year protecting oil executives in the Gulf? The answer says everything about what actually drives the men inside the unit, and it has nothing to do with money. Let's start with what a Delta Force operator actually takes home. And fair warning, these numbers are going to bother you. Delta Force, officially known as 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, or simply the unit, recruits from across the Army. But the vast majority of its operators come from two pools, the 75th Ranger Regiment and the Special Forces Groups, the Green Berets. By the time someone makes it through Delta's selection and operator training course, they're typically an E7 Sergeant First Class at minimum. Many are E8 Master Sergeants. On the officer side, you're looking at O3 Captains through O5 Lieutenant Colonels. Now, military pay in the United States is standardized. It doesn't matter if you're filing paperwork at a desk in the Pentagon or kicking down doors in Mosul at 2 in the morning. An E8 Master Sergeant with 15 years of service earns a base pay of roughly $67,000 per year. An O4 Major, with similar experience, pulls in somewhere between $85,000 and $100,000. Think about that for a second. The same pay scale that covers a human resources sergeant at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, also covers a Delta operator who just got back from a direct action raid against a high-value target in Syria. The Army doesn't distinguish. A sergeant is a sergeant, at least when it comes to the paycheck. People hear Delta Force, and they assume these guys are making 6 figures easy. The reality is that a master sergeant in the unit takes home basically the same base pay as a master sergeant running a motor pool in Kansas. The pay chart doesn't care what unit you're in. Now, base pay isn't the whole picture. Delta operators do receive additional pays and allowances that push their total compensation higher. Let's break those down. First, there's SDAP, Special Duty Assignment Pay. This is the military's way of acknowledging that certain jobs require extra skill and carry extra risk. For Tier 1 operators, SDAP can add anywhere from $75 to $450 per month, depending on the assignment. Then there's Hostile Fire Pay and Imminent Danger Pay. When an operator deploys to a combat zone, and Delta operators deploy a lot, they receive an additional $225 per month. That's the same $225 whether you're on a FOB with a Burger King or clearing a building in Raqqa. Jump Pay adds another $150 per month for maintaining airborne qualification. Demolitions Pay, Language Proficiency Pay, and Dive Pay can each add a few hundred more depending on the operator's qualifications. BAH, the Basic Allowance for Housing, varies by duty station and family status. But for an E8 stationed at Fort Liberty, North Carolina, it runs around $1,500 to $1,800 per month. Stack all of these together, and a senior Delta operator, an E8 with 15 or more years of service, all the qualifications, and deployed for part of the year, you might see total annual compensation somewhere in the range of $90,000 to $130,000. An officer, an O4 or O5, could push that toward $130,000 to $160,000 with the same allowances. That sounds more reasonable, right? Until you compare it to what the private sector is willing to pay for exactly the same skill set. And this is where the numbers get uncomfortable. A former Delta operator who leaves the military and takes a contract with a private military company, a PMC, can command daily rates of $600 to $1,500 per day. Some specialized contracts, particularly those involving protective security details for high-profile clients or training programs for foreign governments, pay even more. Do the math on the conservative end. $600 a day, 300 working days a year. That's $180,000. At $1,000 a day, you're looking at $300,000. Former Delta operators working for companies like Triple Canopy, Constellus, or on contract with the CIA's Global Response Staff have reported annual earnings between $200,000 and $500,000. Some have gone higher. A buddy of mine left the unit and started contracting within 6 months. His first year out, he made more than he'd made in the previous 5 years combined. Same skills, same risk. Just a different employer cutting the check. That means the pay gap between active duty Delta and the private sector is at minimum 3-to-1. In many cases, it's 5-to-1 or higher. A Delta operator is doing the same work, often in the same locations, facing the same threats, but earning a fraction of what the guy next to him with the same training pulls in. So why does this gap exist? It's structural, and it starts with Congress. Military pay in the United States is set by the National Defense Authorization Act, passed by Congress each year. The pay tables are standardized across the entire Department of Defense. There are roughly 1.3 million active duty service members, and their pay is determined by 2 variables: rank and time in service. That's it. There is no elite operator pay grade. There is no special column on the pay table for someone who has been through a selection process that has a historical pass rate below 10%. The Army can tack on special pays and bonuses, but the base structure treats a Delta Force Sergeant Major the same as a Sergeant Major running a supply warehouse. The logic, at least on paper, makes sense for a bureaucracy. You can't create individual pay rates for 1.3 million people. But the consequence is that the military's most valuable operators are compensated at a rate that doesn't reflect their market value, and the private sector knows it. If you're watching this and learning things you didn't know about how the military actually works, hit subscribe. We cover special operations and military topics every week, and the next section of this video explains why operators stay despite all of this. The retention problem is real, and the military knows it. Delta loses operators to 2 primary destinations: CIA Ground Branch and private military contractors. CIA Ground Branch, the paramilitary arm of the Special Activities Center, recruits heavily from Delta and DevGru. The appeal is straightforward. Ground branch operators conduct similar missions but within the intelligence community's infrastructure, which means different pay scales, different retirement structures, and in many cases, significantly higher compensation. A GS-13 or GS-14 position with locality pay and overseas differentials can push well above $150,000, and that's before the additional benefits unique to the intelligence community. PMCs offer even more money with fewer bureaucratic restrictions. A former operator who's tired of Army regulations, mandatory training days, and garrison nonsense can walk into a contracting gig and immediately double or triple their income. The unit competes for talent not with money, but with 2 things the private sector can never fully replicate: mission and autonomy. And this is the part of the story that changes everything you think you know about why these men do what they do. Delta Force gets missions that no other unit in the United States military gets. Period. We're talking about operations that are so sensitive they're briefed directly to the Secretary of Defense or the President. Hostage rescues. Kill or capture missions targeting the world's most wanted individuals. Operations in countries the United States will never publicly acknowledge having personnel in. A former operator once described it as the difference between playing in the Super Bowl every week versus coaching a high school team. The PMC world pays more, but the missions are mundane by comparison. Protecting a diplomat's motorcade in Baghdad doesn't carry the same weight as leading a team into a compound in the middle of the night to capture or kill a terrorist cell leader. People outside the community think it's about the money or the glory. It's neither. It's about access. When you're in the unit, you are at the tip of the spear. There's no closer you can get to the fight. And once you've tasted that, guarding a CEO for $1,500 a day feels hollow. Then there's the operational autonomy. Delta operators have more latitude in how they plan and execute missions than virtually anyone else in the military. The culture inside the unit is famously flat. Operators call each other by first names, regardless of rank. A sergeant can challenge a major's tactical plan if he has a better idea, and that challenge will be heard. This kind of environment doesn't exist in the conventional army, and it barely exists in the private sector either. And then there's the bond. Every operator who's spoken publicly about their time in Delta, from Pete Blaber to Dalton Fury to the handful of others who've written memoirs, describes the same thing. The team bond is irreplaceable. These are men who have bled together, who have carried each other off objectives, who have watched friends die in their arms. No PMC contract reproduces that. No corporate team-building exercise comes close. One retired operator put it this way: being in Delta is like being in the best job in the world that happens to pay poorly. And he wasn't being sarcastic, he meant it. But there's another dimension to this that rarely gets discussed: identity. For many Delta operators, the unit isn't just their job, it is who they are. Their entire adult life has been built around becoming and remaining one of the most capable warriors on the planet. Leaving the unit doesn't just mean changing employers, it means changing your identity. And that's a cost that's hard to put a dollar amount on. Now, the financial picture isn't entirely bleak over the long term. And this matters because the military's retirement system is one of the few areas where the math actually works in an operator's favor. An operator who serves 20 years and retires is entitled to a pension equal to 50% of their base pay for life, with annual cost of living adjustments. For an E9 or O5, that's roughly $35,000 to $55,000 per year, starting as early as their late 30s or early 40s. Add TRICARE health insurance for the family, VA benefits, and the GI Bill for their children, and the total value of the retirement package is significant. But here's the kicker: most Delta operators don't just retire and sit on their porch. They step into the private sector with a resume that is, quite literally, unmatched. Former Delta operators move into consulting roles with defense contractors, senior positions at three-letter agencies, training programs for allied nations, and yes, high-paying PMC contracts. One retired operator described his military career as an unpaid internship for the rest of your life. The skills, the clearances, the network, and the reputation built during 15 to 20 years in the unit translate into earning potential that can far exceed what they made on active duty. Many former operators report earning $200,000 to $400,000 annually in their post-military careers, with some reaching higher through executive roles or entrepreneurship. So the question becomes, is the money sacrifice worth it? And the honest answer is that it depends entirely on what you value. If you measure success purely in dollars, then Delta operators are dramatically underpaid. A software engineer with 6 years of experience at a major tech company out-earns the most experienced enlisted operator in the most elite unit in the world. That's a fact, and it's uncomfortable. But if you measure success by the intensity of the experience, by the quality of the people around you, by access to missions that shape global events, by being part of something that is genuinely irreplaceable, then the calculus changes entirely. You can't put a price on knowing you were the best at the hardest job in the world. The money catches up eventually. But those years in the unit, those missions, that brotherhood, that's something no paycheck can buy. The best soldiers in the world earn less than a mid-level software engineer. That's not a failure of the system. It's a reflection of what actually motivates the people who volunteer for the hardest job on the planet. And it's a reminder that some things simply can't be measured in dollars. The real question is whether the military can keep relying on that motivation forever, or whether the pay gap will eventually drain the unit of the talent that makes it what it is. That's a question the Pentagon is wrestling with right now, and the answer will shape the future of American special operations for decades to come. If you want to understand what happens to Delta operators after they're forced out, that video is on screen now. Subscribe so you don't miss it.